ever wondered why Hemingway's novels hit so hard with just a few simple words? While other writers need to fill pages with flowery descriptions, he can break your heart with a single sentence. Today, we're deep diving into what makes his writing style so effective. We're talking about the iceberg theory, hidden trauma, and how a journalist's training created one of literature's most powerful voices. Trust me, by the end of this video, you will never read dialogue the same way again. Let's start with the obvious question. What's the big deal with Hemingway's writing? If you've ever read Fiesta or A Farewell to Arms, you might have noticed something strange. The writing feels almost simple, like maybe a little bit too simple. But that simplicity is an illusion. What Hemingway does, he packs a lot of emotional weight into seemingly ordinary conversations and descriptions. It is what we now know as the iceberg theory. Most of the meaning lies beneath the surface. Hemingway was a journalist. He was more specifically a war correspondent, and that background shaped everything. In journalism, you don't have the luxury of endless words. You need to communicate clearly, quickly, and powerfully. When you're writing for a newspaper, every word counts. You can't just blabber on. You learn to cut out everything unnecessary and make every sentence do heavy lifting. But I think something deeper is happening here. I know you might think I'm overanalyzing, but please, bear with me. Remember that part about him being the war correspondent? Hemingway's characters and Hemingway himself went through World War I. This was a generation dealing with a lot of trauma, the lost generation, as Gertrude Stein would call it, and the writing style had to reflect that psychological state. When someone's been through something devastating, they usually don't want to or simply can't talk about it directly. They become emotionally withdrawn. And that's exactly what we see in Hemingway's prose. Characters who communicate in short, clipped sentences as they're trying to protect themselves. Now let's take a look at some examples. I want to show you what this looks like in practice. In Fiesta, or The Sun Also Rises, there is this scene where Jake, the main character, picks up a prostitute named Georgette. Mind you, not for sex, but just for company. When she makes a move on him, he stops her. He can't really have sex due to the wound he got during the war. It's never specified what it actually is, and it seems to be more of a psychological thing, but anyway. He stops her, and the dialogue that follows is incredibly, even devastatingly simple. "It's a shame you're sick. We get on well. What's the matter with you anyway?" "I got hurt in the war," I said. "Oh, that dirty war." Would probably have gone on and discussed the war and agreed that it was in reality a calamity for civilization and perhaps would have been better avoided. I was bored enough. Just then, from the other room someone called. The woman asks what's wrong with him, and Jake responds that he got hurt in the war. Then she comments, "That dirty war," and that's it. That's the whole conversation. The conversation could have gone deeper. They could have discussed the war's impact, maybe even bonded over shared trauma, but Jake shuts it down. As he puts it himself, he was already bored enough. This tiny exchange does massive work. First, it establishes Jake's wound without spelling out the details. Second, it shows us his emotional withdrawal. He doesn't want to discuss his trauma, not even superficially. And third, it pretty much foreshadows the entire plot of the novel, because this is exactly what will happen with Brett, the woman he loves. Jake wants companionship, he wants love, and love is what he can give back, but he can't be physically intimate. Brett, on the other hand, needs that physical connection. It's how she feels loved and reassured, so she will seek it elsewhere, with other men, while Jack watches hopelessly. This prostitute scene is like a miniature version of the whole book. Jake picks up a woman for company, she wants intimacy he cannot provide, and they both end up frustrated and distant. Hemingway pretty much gives you the novel's entire conflict in a few paragraphs, but only if you're willing to pay attention. Here's where it gets really brilliant. Jake never specifies his war injury or how it affects him. When Georgette tries to get intimate, the text simply says, "She touched me with one hand, and I put that hand away." If this were written by, let's say, Tolkien, we might get a full page describing Jake's inner turmoil, his memories of the war, his feelings of inadequacy, because Tolkien writes for a very different audience and he has a very different goal in mind. He describes a world that experiences a much slower passage of time and he wants his reader to go with that flow. But Hemingway gives us nothing, because he's writing for the audience that's incredibly busy and that is still processing the trauma of going through the war, of industrialization, of a change in social order, and so on and so forth. This brings us to something crucial. Hemingway's writing style creates this false simplicity. Anyone can read his sentences. The vocabulary is relatively simple, the grammar is straightforward, but if you're not paying attention, you're just skimming through. You will miss everything. You have to read between the lines. You have to catch the subtle cues. It's like emotional detective work. Now let's move on to another example. The most powerful demonstration of Hemingway's writing style comes in the final chapter of The Sun Also Rises. Think about what's actually happening. Jake rescues Brad from her latest romantic disaster, knowing full well that it's probably the last time they will see each other. Brad has already decided to live with her fiancé. They both know damn well that their relationship is impossible. So what do? They go out for drinks and food, talking about literally everything but what's actually bothering them. They discuss the meal, how much Jake eats, how barely Brad touches her food. They talk about Madrid, about their travel plans, about nothing that actually matters to them. And underneath the surface conversation, both characters are falling apart. Hemingway shows us this breakdown not through internal monologue or dramatic speeches, but through tiny details. Brad tells Jake, "Don't get drunk and you'll be alright," which tells us everything about how not alright he actually is. Jake is drinking heavily, which tells us everything without Hemingway saying that
Jake was devastated.
Then comes that final exchange. Brad says that they could have had such a great time together, and Jake simply responds, "Yes, isn't it pretty to think so?" That's the entire ending. No dramatic declarations, no detailed explanations of their doomed love, just this quiet, devastating acknowledgement that some things simply cannot be. Compare it with, for example, Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf also used to talk quite extensively about trauma and complex emotions, but she did it through stream of consciousness, giving us direct access to characters' thoughts and feelings. Hemingway forces you to work for the emotional payoff. You have to deduct yourself the meaning behind his characters' words and actions. Woolf hands it to you directly. Neither is better or worse, they're just different tools for different effects. So, how can you apply this to your own writing? Here are the key principles. Oh, and by the way, I would like to add that most of the principles of Hemingway's writing style are very much in line with how good writing is seen nowadays. You will see in the examples that will follow that most, if not all of the principles make your average piece of advice on what constitutes good writing. Cut ruthlessly. If an adjective isn't adding new information, drop it. If an adverb is explaining something the verb already shows, cut it. Instead of "He walked slowly and sadly down the long, empty street, feeling deeply betrayed by his former best friend," try "He walked down the street." Show through dialogue and action. Instead of writing "Jake's been betrayed," show his behavior when he's been betrayed. Instead of "Sarah was angry and didn't want to talk about what happened," try "Fine, Sarah said. She turned back to her laptop and started typing." Trust your reader. Don't explain everything. Give people credit for being able to pick up on subtlety. Instead of "John ordered another drink because he was trying to avoid thinking about his ex-girlfriend who had left him for his brother, which made him feel terrible," try "John ordered another drink, then another, then another." Less is more. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can write is what you choose not to write. Instead of "When she saw the empty bedroom, memories flooded back of all the happy times they shared and she felt overwhelmed with grief and loneliness," try "She stood in the doorway, The bed was still unmade. Hemingway's genius wasn't in using fancy words or complex sentences. It was in understanding that the most profound human experiences often resist description. By stripping away everything unnecessary, he found a way to make readers feel the weight of what his characters couldn't say. And this is it. This was my humble analysis of Hemingway's writing style. I haven't made this type of videos in a very long time, so please let me know in the comment section what you think, if I should continue with them. And as always, I wish you a great day, a happy writing session, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.